haven't signed it. I know the council has approved it from the standpoint that we approved that contract. And I would like to see us also go back to the old contract insofar as it's borough-wide rather than downtown specific, because the money that the CDC receives is borough rocks from taxpayers.
Yeah, I think when the CDC, unless I think when we use the term revitalize the community, we're not talking about 3 blocks of Rich. And clearly, you know, as you define the downtown, that we are interested in the overall health of the community. And that's whether it's in front of your house and the quality of life that people in your neighborhood can enjoy, or whether it's the street posts on High Street, or the accessibility of pedestrians to get down Main Street when they close the high bridge. So those are all issues that I think it would be myopic of us to restrict the scope of what it is that we're attempting to do to just that narrow. And I would agree that to ask somebody who lives on City Line Avenue to fund something that's happening in 3 blocks of Bridge Street, while there is a connection to the value and quality of life that they have, there's no direct benefit if, however, if a project comes along, it is a direct benefit to them. The community is all benefits. So narrowing the scope, in my opinion, restricts what it is the CDC, as far as I understand it,
the current contract that was approved in council 2 months ago made it a myopic focus. And what Anthony is suggesting is that we go back to the old contract, which becomes borough-wide. And if John's correct and we're operating under the old contract because you haven't signed one, then that's fine, because that's taking us to where we need to be.
And are you in fact looking for clarification, or because there are 2 contracts out there, and if you are, that's fine. But do you have a preference?
From what I understand, because the preference was the way that we worked last year, where you were our economic department. I mean, there's municipalities our size that have economic development departments. That's how we use you, like I said, and that's where the executive director, the president, any one of you, just like other department heads, stop in and say, Anthony, I got a problem with this, or they go to their equals and say, I need the help with that. That's how that works. I thought it worked quite well because the communication was open. That door was always open. The only change I think I'm hearing, and I think Ray was in that room, is now before we start a project, which we have started to do, we've had the pre-meeting plans, had a meeting from whoever was designated for that meeting, and then probably periodic update meetings with that representative for that specific project. But the day-to-day, basically, you would be our economic department, even though you're down on Bridge Street. If you needed, grant information, file information, you needed something to talk to somebody in public works or finance or whatever, or me, you come in just like every other department head does. And that would be between your executive director and myself, or the president and myself.
Rich, could you give us some explanations as you were
Yes, because we spawned a discussion, a misnomer spawned a discussion here, and that misnomer being that the scope of work of the contract has somehow changed, and it hasn't. The focus has not been narrowed to downtown. There are 8 clauses in the professional services agreement. The clause regarding services, clause 1, was not changed. It was not altered. Clause 2 regarding compensation and benefits was altered to allow for payment of quarterly installments in the first week of each quarter. The other clause that was altered was clause 3, and that giving the administrator the same access to borough staff as that accorded to any consultant or independent contractor of the borough. Regarding services, well, just let me read it to you. The administrator will provide administrative services for the program, parentheses, the services, end parentheses, including but not limited to the day-to-day supervision of vendors, suppliers, and contractors engaged by the borough to implement the plan, coordination with the borough when necessary to make decisions, coordination, supervision, facilitation, and enforcement of the design, bidding, and general PennDOT and County of Chester streetscape project requirements, grant writing services, and related and incidental duties in connection therewith. So there has been no narrow focus to one part of town or another. The scope remains the same, whether it's the previous contract or the contract that the revised contract council adopted in June, I guess it was, and that changed maybe a dozen words in the contract itself. So just to let everyone know that as far as scope of work goes, that expectation of the CEC has not changed.
In your opinion, are the 12 words substantive standpoint?
Well, as I said,
Clearly,
let's see.
It sounds to me as though you're looking at an authority to really want to see an owner's representative when it comes to a very specific project, species or concept.
Well, that was existing in the previous contract, and it does mention the streetscape project, but it also mentions grant writing services and related and incidental duties in connection therewith. So, and it says including but not limited to. So
basically it hasn't changed that much, but we're still functioning on
yeah, but that part hasn't changed. What
Having a
changed
reference
was
to geographic location with regard to operational aspects of the
no.
Yes.
I mean, that was my understanding too, that basically the two things that would change in the contract was access to staff. And at Barry's request, it was quarterly payments. Literally, it's substantive stuff that important changes to the contract. But I don't want to step on if Rich still has support. There were other things that I wanted to try to put out there as questions that I thought were important to resolve.
You're done.
No.
Go ahead.
With the change in the project, the leadership roles of project management, and some of the questions that come to mind is, I guess, with any really order of who, what, when, where, how. What are the projects, and who determines the projects? I know one of the things that there have been perhaps misunderstanding, and I think we need to clarify is, as Anthony said, and please don't quoting me or not quoting me, if I'm interpreting what he said wrong, let me know, but how much communication is there to the borough manager? How much responsibility is there to the borough manager? How much responsibility the borough manager is there to the CDC? But more importantly, how will communication from the individual project managers take place back to the borough council? Will it take place through the borough manager? Will it take place directly? How do you see that happening?
Would you like to answer those as you go along?
Well, let me throw out one more non-question, and that's what kind of access to borough resources do you expect, specifically the solicitor and the department heads, and who do you see coordinating that access? This is not for yourself, well, I'm sure it's not general.
That's fine.
I mean, in the perfect world, clearly this isn't. I believe that communication would be on an as-needed basis in the event that there were trouble spots. So, if I were involved with parking, for example, and we, the CEC, it would be my responsibility that it would have to be my arm to come to the borough council meeting to report in the usual CEC slot. To answer your question, how does that information come back? That's how it would come back.
So you see more like a round robin of responsibility to come to the borough meetings to report on statuses and any issues that have come up.
Yes, we actually had that discussion, the fact that whatever, if there were issues that needed to be dealt with, if the borough council meeting is on a Tuesday night and there's an issue on Wednesday, the whole point of having a CDC person is so that we can facilitate not only whatever action